In this episode, I met with Henrietta Lovell, the founder of Rare Tea Company, a business with a mission to revolutionize the way we engage with the tea world. She's working with independent tea gardens around the globe and ensuring sustainable practices to benefit both the land and the people. Henrietta has been a total game changer in the way we drink and think of tea. Please follow PopFoodie on Instagram and subscribe to our brand new newsletter at popfoodie.substack.com to get the latest from the food world in your inbox. My name is Sofie Zettergren Boniver. This is PopFoodie Radio. Hi, Henrietta.
Hello.
Hi. We're here in Copenhagen at Heart Bakery's new place in Reffen. Is that how you pronounce it? Reffen. You don't know because you're not Danish either.
No, I can't pronounce. No. I can't even pronounce bread.
We actually met a few years ago when I was interviewing you on camera at a London hotel.
Yes.
And I was very nervous and very pregnant. And the camera lady, who is also my friend, kept shouting at me to be less booby and to look that way or look that way. And I was so nervous. And your warmth and your humor and your kindness just made the whole day. And I've been following you ever since. And also you changed my tea game because I'm now a long person.
Loose leaf tea lover.
Yes. No more tea bags for me. And I remember we had the silver tip tea, and it was just amazing. Do you want to just start off and tell me what the silver tip tea is? What is that?
Yeah.
Because I never had it before.
It's one of the most pure, delicate, wonderful things that will flood your life with pleasure, but not in a very intense way. It's a very gentle, soft, sweet, elegant, subtle, kind, caring kind of tea.
And comfort tea.
It is in a way, but not in the way like British people would think of like a strong black tea with milk. Or a Swedish person might have a strong black coffee with milk. This is altogether a different experience, more like a gentle stroke than a strong hug.
Yeah.
And it's made from these very, very young spring buds. So imagine you're a tea bush in the mountains of China, and in the winter, the tea goes into hibernation. And all the polyphenols, the amino acids, the sugars go into the roots to be stored over the harsh winter. And the plant goes into status. And then in the spring, it starts to produce its first new leaves. And the silvertip is the leaf bud. And it comes just at the very beginning of spring. The plant is producing new leaves. But while they're still tightly furled in a bud rather than open, that is the silvertip. And it's really just picked about 5 days a year, those first new leaves, and they are using the sugars and the amino acids that have been stored over the winter. So they are sweet and delicate and intense. And because they're not open, they're not photosynthesizing, they're not using up any of those sugars. So they have like all the potential of spring long stored over winter. And you can taste that. And all that happens to them is they're dried. So there's no processing to bring out richer, deeper, malty, fruity, nutty flavors that we get in a dark tea, like a green tea, a oolong, or a black tea. They're just very subtle and sweet and elegant. And, sometimes, for some people who have been drinking very strong teas, they're too light. You have to change your mind. But first thing in the morning, when you first wake up, a cup of white silvertip will just be this gentle elixir that will start your day in a very beautiful way.
And you can, of course, get it from Rare Tea Company. But is it quite hard to find otherwise? Did you know of this tea before you started this company?
Yes. Well, I had the privilege of traveling to China. And I'd read about this tea. I'd fallen in love with tea. And it wasn't something widely available. Not even, I was in Hong Kong for a business and you couldn't buy it in Hong Kong. But I knew that this tea existed because I'd read that it had been something that had been prized for thousands of years, millennia. There were emperors who were buried with this tea. And
wow, this is so exciting.
And then there was this time that tea, and we in Britain and across Europe had been importing tea from China for hundreds of years and treasuring it and understanding its value. But then the Second World War came and there was a breakdown of international trade and China had a revolution. And so all this broke down the tea trade with China, and within the internal revolution, it became politically complicated to drink very expensive teas.
Mm.
And I wondered if they still existed. And at around the turn of the millennium, around 2000s, it was possible to go into China for the first time, to travel into the countryside. It wasn't really encouraged, but it wasn't forbidden. So I could hire a car and go, and I visited the place in Fuding where this white silvertip is most famous for coming from, and I found it still existed and there were still farmers making it. And I was able to buy it and bring it back, and I started Rare Tea with this tea.
Oh, really? Is that how you started it?
Yeah.
Because you were actually in corporate finance, right?
Yes.
So you had a career in finance.
Well, it was more in the operations side of things. But
Yeah. Okay. So how did it come about? How did your life become about tea?
Well, I was working in an international region of this big American multinational company. I worked for all the offices that weren't in America. I represented them, and I ended up working in New York. And I would travel to visit, Europe and Asia, and they had an office in Hong Kong, and I would go out to Hong Kong, and we did some printing in China, and it was, I got to go there for business, and that allowed me to do some travels deeper in, and it was there that I fell in love with tea and thought, what? We've been this nation of tea drinkers, but I didn't know that any of these teas existed or that their flavor profiles could be so different. I was just used to like an English breakfast tea bag. I thought that was what tea was. I mean, people call it normal tea. But that's such a stupid thing. It's only normal for people in the UK. In China, a normal tea is a green tea. Or in Taiwan, it might be an oolong. And, there's no normality to any kind of tea. It's just what we get used to. And there's a whole world out there to discover. And it's quite terrifying when you think about that word, English breakfast. Because I was just at a conference in Madrid Fusion, and I was talking to a room full of sommeliers who were working in the top restaurants in Europe, across Europe and America. And I asked them, what is English breakfast tea? Who served this? They all said, yeah, we've served this. And I said, what is it? Where does it come from? And nobody knew. Like, what is it? Where does it come from?
Yeah.
And so we're very, very far removed from the maker.
Yeah.
From the community, from the location, from where it comes from. I said to them, imagine if I offered you a bottle of wine and I said, it's red.
Yeah.
Like, wouldn't you be interested to know a little bit more? How would you upsell that? How would you give people a more
That's a good
excited...
comparison to wine, to the wine industry.
Yeah, so people kind of knew that English breakfast tea is a black tea. That's about it.
Yeah.
But it could have 30 different countries of origin.
Oh, really?
Well, 30 different origins, and within that 6 or 7 countries.
And you work with single origins, right?
I work with farms, and I can tell you where all of our tea comes from. Even if I make a blend of English breakfast that isn't more than one country, I'll tell you it comes from this farm, and this farm.
Yeah. And that's the thing about the Rare Tea Company, right?
Yes.
Do you want to tell me about the sort of the idea you had when you left finance and started Rare Tea Company?
Well, actually, to start with,
very brave, by the way.
Stupid and naive.
Yeah.
I was not. I didn't find it very satisfying. I mean, I did make money, but I didn't find that I was doing anything useful with my life, and I did want to do something that would at least be useful. But I was naive and I think stupid, because it takes a kind of stupidity to start something that doesn't already exist. You have to be like blindly willful. I'm going to make something different. And I didn't realize at the time that...
And this was like 20 years ago, right?
Yeah, 20 years ago this year.
2004, yeah.
Wow. I didn't realize that, not only was I bringing... Because I was bringing only like high quality loose leaf tea, that I was bringing something to start a company, but there was no market for it. I mean, that's kind of stupid. But it was also a lot of fun. But I wanted to bring people really, really great tea. And I thought for the flavor, for the experience. But I didn't really understand the economics of the tea world. I didn't realize that in China and in Japan, and to much greater extent, Korea and Taiwan, there isn't any poverty in tea. There's a domestic market, and the domestic market very much appreciates the value of what they have. The wine comparison, as with wine in France, say, there's a very good domestic market, and people understand that there are different values. They could buy a cheap plonk in the supermarket in a plastic container, or they can buy a beautiful single estate vineyard wine crafted for great flavor, and it will have a higher value. So that exists in China, Japan. In China, for instance, they spend more of their income on tea as a percentage of income than they do on alcohol.
Wow.
So the problem starts to arise where the tea was brought by the British, mostly the British, not our finest hour, to other countries where there was no domestic market, but it was for export. So that would be, start with India, Nepal, Sri Lanka, and then to East Africa, where we, as the global north, are the main market for that, and we've lost our value of it. We're so removed, we don't even know what country it comes from. We just want something in a tea bag from a supermarket shelf with the brand name on it. Heaven forbid we would know even the country of origin, let alone the farm. That has devalued and disconnected us, and so those people can live in real poverty. I mean, real poverty, not like, oh, we can see poverty in our streets of Europe or America. I mean, people who don't have enough to feed their children, whose life expectancy might be the 40s.
Wow.
And that's medieval in terms of European culture.
And you work directly with the farmers, right? So you have no brokers. You work with them. So you actually meet them and...
Absolutely. And I think the reason why we have this poverty is because it's hidden from us. If you knew that industrial tea bag you buy off the shelf was made by a woman who couldn't afford to feed her children and wasn't going to live past her 40s, you'd be like, well, that's not worth it. But because it's hidden behind a brand and a name, and we don't know the connection, we're blind to it, so we don't realize. And so the big companies that sell and provide tea can make profit without anyone complaining. And so by making direct connections, we can break that. That's why that's the revolution I want to make. I want people to know where their tea comes from and the relationship they have from their cup to the maker. So that, because it isn't worth the exploitation of people. I'd much rather pay, and I know everybody listening to this would, a few pence more, a few cents more for something that was made by people who were getting the benefit of it directly. And it wasn't going to the brokers or to the big brand.
And how did you get that message out? How did you start? How was it for you to try to tell this story when this was, because 20 years ago, tea bags was pretty much all we had, right? There was no sort of tea culture really in Europe.
It's still hard, I have to say. It's not. A lot of people, because this information has been kept for them, they're like, why would I bother to make a change? This is easy. And also we have emotional attachments, and sometimes people get cross with me and I say, please don't be cross with me for telling you this story, because I'm just trying to open your eyes, not to beat you with the head with a stick. But, if you've been drinking something all your life and someone tells you, but this is exploiting our brothers and sisters in East Africa and Southeast Asia, they would be like, oh, nope, I don't want to. And to answer your question, the way... One of the best ways I found to tell the story was for the people we really respect in the food world to tell that story for me. So, here we are in Copenhagen because I have some wonderful friends, collaborators, customers here. So we work with, Noma for, I think 15 years now. And, if René Redzepi says, this is really good tea, other people are like, oh, this may be quite good tea. And we do the tea pairing at Jordaner, which is an amazing restaurant where they just serve tea as the pairing for the dishes. No juices, no nothing. They're non-alcoholic. It's just teas. And, when you get to have that experience and that top level, ultra fine dining is taking it seriously, then it filters down through other people who are like, oh, this is good. And tea can be really, really expensive, but also... like the wine world, there are levels. You don't just have to drink Chateau Yquem. There are very, very good wines that are not so crazy expensive. And the same with direct trade tea. And here at Heart Bakery, they can sell really good tea at a very affordable price to a customer rather than just fine dining. But they're influenced. I think everybody is influenced by those celebrity chefs. Yeah, and you worked with some of the biggest names in that field, right? Like, I'm really lucky, and I'm really lucky that when I began 20 years ago, it was quite a new field. And when I first started working with chefs, they would be like, oh, I've never had anything like this. So I got to be the first one to give like Gordon Ramsay or Claire Smith or Angela Hartnett, who from that Gordon Ramsay world, or, Dave Chang in New York, Dan Barber or Nancy Silverton, some of these people who I really admire. I sell tea to Alice Waters in California. How cool is that? That is cool. That is cool, yes. But how lovely to be able to have these people championing. Yeah. And at that, they have a much more authoritative voice than I had. And when I started as a young woman, there was, it's true to say that a young woman starting a new business is often patronized.
Yeah.
So you have to get a little help from people who are already a little bit more established.
Yeah.
That's a big help.
Sweden is such a sort of coffee country. Yeah. We don't drink a lot of tea. We'd always drink coffee. So we haven't seen a lot of the tea sommelier business, but you say it's growing and you can see it here in Copenhagen.
Yeah.
What is your take on tea sommeliers? And do you think it's a growing thing or?
Well, the sommelier in a restaurant, traditionally that role is to look after all the drinks. And I would really love to educate sommeliers more. And that's a lot of the work that I do now, is to work with sommeliers who are already there, established, incredibly knowledgeable. They already know all the things that I need them to know about tea. They're excited by them, like the terroir, the pH of the soil, how long the sun hits a field for in the morning, how long the sun lasts in a certain period, how much cloud cover there is, the drainage, the altitude of the field. So between one field and another, the tea will be slightly different, even if the varietal is exactly the same. But then you've got the varietals. I mean, everything you know about wine is true of tea. When it's picked, how it's harvested. All wine comes from grapes. All tea comes from Camellia sinensis.
So different seasons can have a different taste.
Every harvest.
And depending on where they're growing, if they're growing close to something else, can they sort of take some of the...
Absolutely everything you know. Yeah. Absolutely everything you know about. So if it's, say, champagne, you have one terroir, but millions of, not hundreds of different producers and hundreds of different kinds of champagne. And even within the same house, there will be different cuvées. The same is true of tea. I mean, it really depends on when you harvest, how you harvest, what the varietal is, but also that little patch of land that it grows on. So the sommelier already understands and appreciates all that. And then if they expand that knowledge from wine into tea, they can tell the story, because storytelling is so important, right? That's what a sommelier does in a restaurant. Yeah. They select amazing harvest and then they explain the story to the guest. And the flavor profile, and they get excited by flavor profiles. And so I would really love the sommeliers that already exist in restaurants to embrace tea more and understand more about it. It's actually not taught as part of sommeliers training, but it could be.
Where should I go if I want to get a good tea menu in
Stockholm? We have a very lovely friend who's taken our tea with her from here in Copenhagen. She used to be the restaurant manager of Noma, and she now works at Coco and Carmen in Stockholm.
Yeah.
And so she took my tea with her.
Wow,
you can
I
get
that.
A lovely cup of tea. And that's another thing. Relationships are super important. We try to make relationships with the farmers. I know all the farmers that I buy from, and I know that the way they treat the land and the people is in a very respectful and sustainable and hopefully transformative way. And I take that all the way to the customers that we have, whether they're an online customer, we sell online across the world and want to make sure that they get a very real personal experience. And then the restaurant customers and the retail customers, everybody should be treated in the same wonderful, respectful way. And then those relationships go on and spread. So we've never done any advertising at Rare Tea, but 20 years we're now a global brand.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Because of lovely people like Catherine.
Yeah. But how did you connect with those people? Well, how did you get in touch with Renee? How did that happen?
Oh gosh, how did I get in touch with Renee? Gosh, no one's ever asked me that. I'm trying to think. I remember. Yes. Yeah. So this is very early days.
And Renee is, of course, the founder of Noma. Yeah.
And obviously the head of it till this day. He was they closed Noma to renovate, and he couldn't afford not to pay the staff, so he did his first ever pop-up in London at Claridge's hotel. And it was quite revolutionary for these, I think they were called seal fuckers at the time. Do you remember?
Well, no.
And people were very dismissive they were very avant-garde, and they were serving live ants and things like that. So it was quite revolutionary, and to come to a very safe,
traditional
very
place.
Traditional, it's the best hotel in London. And Gordon Ramsay had just come out with a 3 Michelin star restaurant, and they were coming in with these crazy Danes. And there Renee wanted to have some British herbs and British teas. Well, we do grow a tiny bit of tea in Britain, but it's not very commercial. But we do obviously, like here in Denmark, grow lovely herbs. And he asked me to come and help him and we did a tasting, and I showed him all the teas from around the world, and he was like, oh, I had no idea. I remember in the kitchen of Claridge's. And from that, I met the F&B director of Claridge's, and he said, oh my gosh, you should be doing the tea at Claridge's. And I got one of my best relationships ever, which is with this incredible hotel, which we still do today. But I do remember Renee saying to me, look, I love your tea. I get what you're doing. These flavors are great. The farmer stories are great. I want to support you. But I have to say, we only sell like 3 or 4 teas a week at Noma. And I'm actually older than Renee. And I said to him, listen, if you sold Nescafe, you wouldn't sell much coffee. And he was like, okay, let's do it.
Good point.
So, they were making a herbal blend that wasn't particularly well put together. And, sometimes people do think, oh, I'm a chef or I work in drinks. I can just make a blend. It's like, it's fine. In some places, they even let the guests do it. Fancy French restaurant, there's a trolley going around with some herbs on it, and they let the guests choose which ones, and then they chop them up and they put them in a teapot and they put water. What chef would let the guests choose the ingredients?
No. That's crazy.
It's insane. Sometimes it's so disgusting. They'll put rosemary and lavender with sage, and you're like, oh my God, Anyway.
I had the same thing with scents, though, when you're supposed to do your own scents.
Yeah,
I'm like, why would I want to do that? When there's experts,
Those takes 20 years or something to learn. Anyway. So now at Noma, they sell as much or more tea than coffee. So
wow, do they?
And you say that Danes are like Swedish Swedes who would want to drink coffee, but actually after a meal in a restaurant, at the end of some very big experience, it's lovely to try something new, something delicious, but it better be good. And at Noma, it's going to be delicious. Yeah. The reason why you often don't take a tea in a restaurant is because you think, well, it'll be worse than I get at home. It'll be an industrial tea bag with the wrong amount of water, the wrong temperature. Why would I spend €5 on something that is like I could drink at home better? So I'll have a coffee which will at least be made for me with a good bean in a good restaurant and with an expensive bit of kit and frothed milk or whatever.
Yeah.
And so people drink maybe fresh mint, because they know it can't be fucked up.
Yeah, I always take fresh mint.
Because no one's going to fuck it up.
Yes.
Oh my God, so sad. So that's why fine dining was the revolution, because people trusted it. They would have a tea, and then from there they would think, oh, this is delicious. I will then try and have this in my life. And now you can get good tea in places like Heart Bakery. That's a really great.
But how do you make good tea? Like, you have to have the right amount of water. You have to the sort of how you heat the water, and the temperature is really important. What are the mistakes we're doing?
Well, it's also very
besides
simple.
Buying the wrong teas,
Well, to start with, so I was just doing some consultancy in Portugal last week, and they were like, well, tea bag is so simple, and there is no such thing as a sustainable tea bag. There is no such thing as an eco-friendly tea bag.
Wow.
No, it's impossible. It's a single-use bag.
Yeah.
It's a single use of precious natural resources, whether it's made of paper, that's trees, or corn, that's a resource that we don't want to be taking and making into a plastic. And whether it's a plastic made from oil or from cornstarch, it's still a plastic that leaches nanoplastics. And really, why are we doing that? It doesn't disappear in the manufacturing process, all the bleaches and glues and solvents and stuff that turn a tree or corn into paper and plastic.
So there's no way to buy good sort of tea bags.
No, you're going to be ingesting bleaches, glues,
that's
nanoplastic.
Not sustainable.
And that's in your body. It doesn't disappear by magic. You take that paper or that plastic silken bag and you put it in hot water.
That's so crazy. I never thought about that.
And the bleach string and the staple and the glue and almost all of them have nanoplastics either in the glues or the seals or the actual bag. All sorts of, but just think about the bleaches. You can't turn a tree into paper without using chemicals. And then they go into our rivers and streams as the carbon use of manufacture, when you could just be using a tea bag, a loose leaf tea in a teapot, or as I made for you today here at Heart, just a cup infuser. It's super simple.
Yeah,
it can be done in small or in mass scale. You don't need to use a single use tea bag.
Because you were making me a cup of tea downstairs and you were doing it yourself. Was that because you know how to do it?
Like I just didn't want to bother the staff.
No, okay.
But I just put, so the first thing is easy, and you really don't have to worry. You don't need the single-use bag that is going to, destroy our world. The biggest thing, I've worked with the United Nations on this, one of the biggest things that a human, personal, individual can do is thinking about their own single-use waste as a tea bag. I mean, in Britain, we use sometimes 6 a day.
Yeah.
Think about
per person, yeah.
And even if you're only using 2 or 1, just think about your lifetime use. The other thing is it's really not that complicated. I mean, people in Sweden make coffee at home and they don't really drink very much instant coffee.
No.
When they think about, you grind your beans, you make sure you have the right amount of beans to water, whether you're using AeroPress, pour over, filter machine. You just get the ratio of water to coffee right.
Yeah.
And then you put it through some kind of filter, a French press, an AeroPress, some kind of, think how easy tea is. You just put the tea in the water and then you strain it off.
Yeah.
But you do have to make sure you get the right amount of tea to water.
Yeah. And how much is that?
Well, it really depends on the tea and your preference. But, usually it's about 3 grams of tea to a cup. It depends on the size of your cup, 2.5 grams to 150 ml.
Yeah.
And then usually around that, depending on the tea, but that's a very good benchmark. And then you want to have the right amount of, filtered water. I don't want something that is like really full of chlorine, but you can use just lovely tap water. And then the temperature of the water will dissolve different flavors. So if you really like green tea, it has amino acids that have a flavor that dissolves at a lower temperature. So the soft, sweet carbohydrates and the kind of more silky, vegetal, nutty flavors that are so delicious in green tea dissolve at around 70 degrees. So you don't need to raise the water higher. That will dissolve all the tannins, the bitter elements that will overpower the sweeter ones. So if you made your tea at 70 degrees, your green tea, it will taste more delicious.
Yeah.
But if you want a really strong black tea, you use higher temperature water. And if you wanted to put milk in it, I would use 100 degrees. Because I want all of the bitter.
For the black tea?
Yeah, because I want to take all the bitter flavors to balance with the milk. But if I wanted to drink it black without milk, I would probably stop around 80, 85. So a temperature controlled kettle will really geek out your life and make it so much easier. If you don't have that, just titrate the water. So you use boiling water and just add some cold water. So it's about, if you were making 1 single cup of green tea, that's 150 milliliters, you would use 50 milliliters of cold water to 100 of boiling. That will give you 70.
Okay, yeah.
And if you wanted to get it to 80, use 25 ml of cold water.
Because that's quite a common mistake, isn't it? That we use sort of boiling water and we sort of ruin the tea.
Yeah, it just depends. It depends what the flavor. If you want it really strong and you love all those bitter elements, use hotter temperature. And if you like the sweeter, subtler, use cooler. So don't let anyone tell you that you're doing it right or wrong. I'm just giving you some information. If you control the temperature, you can control some of the flavor profile. And then how long you infuse it for. The biggest mistake, I think, is that we've been told a lot for years that you need to infuse your tea for 3 to 5 minutes.
Yeah.
That is absolute bullshit.
Okay.
The best flavors dissolve in about 90 seconds. If you want stronger tea, use more tea.
Okay.
Like in China,
so
they make it
time.
Almost immediately. It'll be like 10 seconds, 20 seconds, because they will use like Gai 1, a little small cup, and high leaf to water ratio. So they might use 5 grams and 60 ml.
Okay.
Very quick, immediate. We would like to make a whole cup or a pot. So you might want to infuse it for up to 90 seconds. But after that, you're just getting all the bitter flavors through.
Okay.
And that depends. You may want all the like dry, bitter flavors, and you might say, okay, I'm going to infuse this for 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Because that's the flavor profile, but you don't need to.
Yeah, so it's a way to sort of try different things to see what you like then.
Yes, experiment.
Yeah.
But stop at 90 seconds generally if you're drinking tea without milk and see what you think there. And if you think you want it stronger, rather than extracting it longer, try putting in some more tea because it's the concentration of really nice flavors that all dissolve by about 90 seconds that you're really looking for, rather than the longer extraction will just become more bitter and flat.
So Henrietta, do you have like a favorite pairing? Because you're working a lot with chefs, of course, and you also have cold fusions that you sell on your website. Do you have like a favorite pairing with tea and food that you sort of you go back to, or something that really sort of knocked you, like?
Well, quite surprisingly, I'm often surprised by what I don't expect. So I think, okay, this is going to be a perfect pairing. I've been doing it for so long. I like 20 years experience. It's going to be obviously this. And it doesn't work. And I think, in that case, I go completely the opposite to where I think. So one of the interesting things is jasmine silvertip, a very popular tea that we do, which is the silvertip we spoke at the beginning, which has been scented with fresh jasmine flowers. There's no additives, no oils, no flavorings. I would never put artificial flavorings or what they call natural flavorings on my tea. That's just stuff made in a lab.
Is that what we call greenwashing?
There is a lot of this in Sweden, so I'm sorry if this hurts you, but if you really like mango tea or Christmas tea or one of those flavored teas, I do need to explain to you that when it says no artificial flavorings, that generally means it has flavorings. Those are things that have been made in a laboratory by a scientist. They say it was a strawberry flavoring. It has nothing to do with strawberries. It's a highly processed food. It's derived from some kind of natural food, but been highly processed to create something else. The molecules have been, redistributed to make something. Is that a natural flavoring? Is that greenwashing or health washing or just misleading us to call it a natural flavoring? In the old days, it used to be called E256 or E113, but now they don't have to do that anymore because it's a trade secret.
Oh, okay.
So they can just call it a flavoring.
Yeah.
That's absurd, right? And when I had some of these teas analysed, I said, what is really extraordinary to me is they taste like candy. And I went to the lab that tests all our tea for pesticides because we don't expect our farmers in very remote places in the world to certify organic because it's extremely expensive and difficult for them. So we get the tea tested. So I can tell you my tea is organically farmed, but we take the responsibility for the testing. I can't put the stamp on it, but I can say it's grown without pesticides and herbicides. So I went to those labs and I got the tea tested and I said, okay, this was a tea that had strawberry, vanilla, and it had a name. And I said, what is in this? And they said the number one ingredient after tea is sucrose, sugar.
Oh, wow.
And I said, how is that possible? It doesn't say that on the label. It just says fruit. And natural flavorings. And he said, well, it's the fruit. They've put apple pieces in there and strawberry pieces and raspberry pieces. But if you put strawberry in hot water, it will taste sour.
Yeah.
If you put like pieces of freeze-dried fruit into hot water, you will not get the flavor of strawberry sweeties, strawberry candy. So what they've done is they've sprayed it with fructose, fruit sugars, which they're allowed to do because they put fruit in it, right? So I just added more fruit sugars, usually from apple. So they put pure sugar on there, and then they use Haribo flavors to make it taste like candy.
Why do people not know this?
Because
we don't know this.
No, you don't know this. And you think, oh, it's like so lovely. I got my lovely fruit tea. If you want to have fruit tea, take your favorite jam, say a lovely strawberry jam or raspberry jam, and then add some boiling water to it so you can make a syrup. Strain it so it's just a syrup, or you can make it yourself. Just make a syrup with straining out the fruit, and then add that to your tea, and then at least you have fruit and tea. And sugar. You're going to need to put sugar in it.
Yes.
Yeah. That's what we do for Claridge's because we have customers who
you
like...
do?
Yeah, we work with a jam company to make us a syrup because people wanted to have fruit tea and we were like, I'm not giving people bullshit flavorings.
Yeah, they want the strawberry vanilla tea, right?
Yeah, so we put vanilla in the tea. So if you wanted to make vanilla tea, take a vanilla pod, open it up, put it in your tea in a glass jar, and then just leave it for, making sure it's covered, leave it for a month, turning it around every now and then, and you'll have the most delicious natural vanilla tea you could ever have.
That's a really good tip.
So I mean, but also if we had really nice wine, would you put vanilla in it or strawberries?
No, probably not.
No. So if you buy really good tea, they have so many incredible flavors within it that you don't need to.
You don't want to ruin them.
But I do scent, because it's been done for thousands of years, we do scent with fresh jasmine flowers. The tea just absorbs the scent of the flowers. And there's one other, I do put bergamot oil on my Earl Grey because that is what Earl Grey is. Yeah. Earl Grey is a tea scented with bergamot oil. Yeah. So you have to, but I don't use a flavoring. I use real essential oil of bergamot from Calabria. That's, and if I would put things like, if you really like chai, of course we should make chai, which is, with natural spices. You can put roses in your tea or saffron or turmeric or whatever.
Make your own tea.
But make it natural, not a flavoring that is, we should be eating less processed things made by laboratories and more natural. Is it something you can find in your larder? Then good. Is it something nature created? Wonderful.
So back to the pairing.
Oh, sorry.
I lost you too because I said greenwashing, and then we
talked about. So I love jasmine tea with chocolate. You would think that would be impossible. This white tea. Oh, really?
Jasmine tea and chocolate.
You think it's way too delicate. This white tea that's scented with jasmine flowers, I like it with a very strong black chocolate. It works amazing. It somehow sits separately on the palate, so you can taste both things. I love oolong with cheese, especially a Thai Guan Yin, which is a Chinese, very green side of oolong tea with any cheese apart from a blue cheese. Amazing. I love teas from the Himalayas with ginger. So if you like ginger cake or cardamom, you said, of course we're in Scandinavia, and cardamom croissants, cardamom bun. Yeah. I would take a high Himalayan black tea.
Really?
From Nepal or from Sikkim or from Meghalaya. We call the one from Meghalaya cloud tea. A cloud tea with a cardamom bun. Oh my God, it's just, there's something about the Himalayan teas. They're very floral, but not in a, we say floral, but I don't mean it smells like a bunch of flowers. It's just highly aromatic. Yeah. The aromas are so important, and you have it black without milk. Make 80 degree, so they're usually black teas, although we do have a green tea from Nepal called a Himalayan Spring. That will also be really nice with the cardamom.
And if you're totally new to tea, like you've had tea bags your whole life, Earl Grey, English breakfast, and you go into a rare tea company and you want to get some good quality tea, where should you start? If you just get three teas.
I would say, okay, if you really, it depends, take the tea that you really love, that you already love. So if you're a black tea drinker, go for an English breakfast, but I would go for the single estate English breakfast blend called Los Malawi, because that is like a cuvée from a vineyard. That's like me trying to tell you the story of that farm through one tea, through different harvests. I picked different teas from different harvests of the same farm to tell you, that give you the best flavors of that farm, and try it without milk so that you can really understand the flavor. I think people in Sweden don't put milk in their tea anyway, but English people do. And make it at different temperatures and different strengths so that you get it until you find it like bang on right for you. And that's such a fun thing to do, like, oh, I like it much softer than I thought I would. For a lot of people, they might stop at 60 seconds and say, oh, this is exactly how I like my tea. I've been drinking it stronger than I thought. Or they may like it really strong and to add sugar. That's okay. You know? I would start there. And if you really like green tea, or you think you like green tea, or you drink green tea for the health reasons, that is a big thing. People drink green tea, perhaps with flavorings on it, because they want to be healthy, but they don't like the flavor. It's probably because you haven't had really delicious green tea. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of companies flogging disgusting green tea to people who will drink it.
It can actually taste
delicious.
Yes, delicious, but also terrible.
Oh,
like depending on Yeah,
I mean, and I suppose if you've had green tea and you think, no, it's not for me. If you only had a really cheap white wine, you may say, it tastes like vinegar. It's really not for me. There's so many out there, and we've had so little access to the really good stuff. Especially if you haven't ever drunk a good loose leaf. Sometimes the tea bags are. Nobody who really liked tea would put it in a tea bag. That is like coffee beans going into instant coffee. Like they don't have room to expand. It's a way of taking convenience and profit above flavor and quality. So I say if you're drinking a lovely loose leaf green tea, it also needs to be stored really nicely, and you have to know where it comes from. So do work with somebody who's bought it from somewhere rather than just from a broker, because it could have been sitting in a warehouse for years. So you want it lovely and fresh and delicious.
What do you were talking about health benefits, and you also have a course on or a class on your website about tea and wellness. What do you call it?
I call it well-being. I'm
well-being.
I'm frightened of that. There's no such word in the English language as wellness. It's like made
that's
up.
American. Yeah, that's goop.
Yeah, it's made up. And so, but there is well-being. We do want to feel well.
Yeah, it's a good word though. Well-being. Yeah, and so it's välbefinnande in Swedish.
And so, I mean, tea has been used as a medicine for thousands of years. It's considered something that, I don't think you'll find any scientist who would say that tea wasn't a drink that is very good for you. It has amino acids and polyphenols that help get rid of free radicals in our body. It's just an amazing plant that is good, but it also has caffeine, but it has L-theanine, which balances the caffeine, so you get this much more zen feeling from tea, especially green teas are higher in L-theanine. So the reason why a Buddhist monk, for instance, drinks green tea when he's meditating is you have the lift of caffeine and the balance of L-theanine.
Is that what makes green tea healthier than other sort of teas?
No, all tea has both.
Oh, okay.
Green tea, because of the way it's processed, is a little bit higher in L-theanine.
Yeah.
But, you know, green tea is not healthier. It's all made from the same plant.
Okay, yeah. So what is this sort of healthy sort
there's
of
no
branding
detox
around?
tea, and
No.
tea is good for you, but I would say that industrially processed, industrially made, processed green big brand tea will have less health benefits than something that's being crafted with care and love, organically and sustainably. So a good quality black tea would definitely be better for you than an industrial green tea.
Yeah.
But green teas do have a slight level more of L-theanine, which is just something that affects your brain in a certain way. It's not your whole health. And it just gives you a more calm feeling to offset the caffeine. So you get this much more gentle high than you do from caffeine. Coffee will take you up and drop you down.
Yeah.
Whereas green tea or any tea will give you this more gentle rise, and it will last longer, and your brain will be in a more comfortable state rather than an anxious state.
Do you drink coffee at all?
Yeah, I love coffee.
You do.
Yeah, I love coffee. I love all flavors,
Yeah.
but I do think I would try to drink a tea that was organically grown and that was crafted for flavor. That is definitely going to be healthier for you. Tea is good for you. Herbs, ironically, don't have the same amount of amino acids and polyphenols that tea does. So I think people sometimes drink herbs because they think it's better for them. Maybe they were drinking lemon verbena or a mix of herbs made from local plants. They aren't going to give you the same benefits as tea.
No.
But they won't have caffeine. That's the one thing. If you want to avoid caffeine, you have to avoid tea.
Yeah.
All tea has caffeine.
All teas?
Yeah.
Rooibos as well?
Rooibos not a tea. Rooibos
No.
is a herb.
Oh, okay, that's a herb.
Yeah,
Okay.
so rooibos is a legume. Lemon verbena, mint, chamomile, they're all herbs. They don't have any caffeine.
Okay.
But white tea, green tea, Earl Grey tea, lemon jasmine tea, oolong tea,
Yeah.
they are tea teas.
I know you've had your health challenges yourself. How did you use tea as a sort of medicine?
Oh, I think that's a lovely question. I found white silver tip tea that we spoke about at the beginning, that's pH neutral. That's very good when you have problems with your tummy. Like for me, it was chemotherapy, but it might be from many other reasons. So that's a great tea to use. And I do also drink the herbs. I love the herbs, like rooibos, because it's very good for rehydrating. And I'm not saying that they're not good. They are wonderful. Mint can be great for your tummy as well, and ginger. And there are wonderful plants out there for us to use. Tea is one of them that shouldn't be overlooked. But for me personally, I have to be careful that I don't take too much caffeine in the evening because it could disturb my sleep. And matcha is very, very strong.
Does matcha have caffeine as well?
Much more caffeine than any other tea.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
So matcha is made from the ground leaf. And normally we make tea from an infusion of the leaf. So we don't ingest the leaf. But in matcha, it's suspended in the water. So you're drinking the whole leaf. So it's actually like coffee. It's got a huge amount. And it's also very intense, which is why often you get it with milk here. You have it as a latte.
Yeah.
That is going to stop your body absorbing some of the goodness of the matcha.
With the milk?
Yeah. So better to drink it, but it's got to be organic.
Yeah.
Like you're drinking the whole leaf. I don't want to drink.
Yeah.
If I don't know exactly where it comes from and that it's grown by an organic farmer, I really wouldn't drink it. In Japan, they don't really believe in organic farming. It's very rare. They call pesticides and herbicides plant medicine.
Okay.
So you really want to be careful.
A different view.
Yes, you've really got to look for an organic one. And also a lot of the stuff that's sold is actually from China and full of pesticides as well. So look for someone who's buying from a Japanese garden.
And you have matcha on your website as well. Yeah.
Yeah, lovely place called Wahokan. Amazing place in Japan that I went to visit just last spring. Oh, they're really fascinating people, and I love this matcha. And we do have different ones, some for lattes as well, because people love to drink it that way. But if you have it with something, it doesn't have to be milk in your tea. You could have it with something sweet, or something delicious, sticky. In Japan, it would be a mochi. It's rude to serve matcha without something to eat because it's intense.
Yeah.
So it would be like a bean paste. But I like, you know how people make those, I don't know what we call them anymore. They're like made from dates and cacao, and you have a little sweet, like a natural sweet that you make yourself with peanut butter and
like the
figs, raw.
Yeah,
that can be an amazing, if you're trying to stay on the healthy side. I can imagine, with some nuts, and that is great with matcha. It could be just a digestive biscuit or a spandau or something. Then and just drink the matcha without milk. But if you do enjoy it with milk, I mean, enjoy it. It's a delicious drink, but just be aware that you're drinking a hell of a lot of caffeine. And so I wouldn't do the Starbucks half a litre.
No.
Be respectful of the fact that you're taking in a big hit.
Yeah. Henrietta, you just moved to Mexico with your new husband, who happens to be the founder of Heart Bakery as well, where we're at. How has that changed your view on food and tea and how you live? Like, how has that changed you moving to Mexico? Because that's quite a different place to be than London.
Well, they do actually drink a lot of herbs as a soft drink, like agua frescas. They drink hibiscus, they call it Jamaica, and they make soft drinks out of herbs and fruits and things, which is really exciting.
Cold or warm drinks?
Cold drinks. Yeah. But they don't really have a tea culture as such, and that's been exciting. No, that's been exciting. I'm working with some farms to grow herbs, Mexican herbs, to sell in the Americas, because I think it's silly to import European herbs or Asian herbs to a continent that grows amazing things, extraordinary herbs. There is, and in South Americas, there's mate, and there are some tea in Argentina. So that's going to be exciting to explore the whole American continent. But in the terms of living in Mexico City, there's an amazing food culture. Yeah. So intense, so much going on. I'm learning all the time. And like all the food pairings I'm learning are so different because everything is based on chilies and limes and coriander. And it's been really exciting. You never know everything. And it's quite good to be knocked.
And what are you into right now? Did you find something new in Mexico, like food or drink or something that you know?
Tacos all the time. I mean, I really like the street food. I really, really do. And it's very accessible, it's very affordable, and it's so varied. And yet it's based on around a few ingredients, and yet different people are making it so differently.
And the tortillas are totally different, right, than what we're used to. Yeah.
Because the ingredients are so readily available, things like avocados and limes, and it's much, much cheaper, which is interesting. So you can really go to town. You can go and eat 10 tacos in a day and you've only spent €10.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. Wow. That's amazing.
So that's been fun. And, you know, there are interesting drinks like tepache, which is pineapple that's fermented. And there are people making incredible kombuchas. And I'm learning in many, many different areas. I'm very fascinated by the fermentation process. I work with a lot of kombucha makers.
I was going to say, because I think that's one of the most amazing things about the Rare Tea Company is how you have worked sort of cross categories with kombuchas, with scents and different sort of doing like fun collabs. Do you want to tell me a little bit about that?
I suppose the kombucha is kind of obvious. That's tea.
Yeah, because
it's
buy
tea. My tea for the base. But I've also done a lot of consultancy and like looking at how we can change the flavor profiles of kombucha by looking at the way we handle the tea, and that's been really fascinating. But then, you know, I'm obsessed with blending and taking things and combining them, which is what the British kind of brought to tea. Like, I mean, I was rude about English breakfast before, only in the fact that it takes, if we don't know where the ingredients come from, it can be a barrier to people's understanding of the communities behind tea. But in itself, it just means a blend of teas that is better than the sum of its parts. Yeah. You know, taking things and trying to make something even better. And so I do love blending. And that's brought me into working with whiskey houses, because the first ever whiskey blenders were tea blenders. And then perfumiers, because it's about the combination of aromas. And that's been really fun. There's a young brand in New York called DS and Durga. They've been really fun to work with. You know, then there are more established brands like Penhaligon's in the UK. And then, oh my God, the last one that I did was super fun, was put together a traveling tea set for Smythe's and a super luxury British leather brand, you know, like super, super luxe. Yeah. We put together this thing that a very extravagant, wealthy person would take with them on their travels. So it
yeah.
has, you know, the teapot and teacups and napkins, and instead of they used to have things like sugar tongs.
Yeah.
And like, who puts like sugar in their tea anymore? Very few people. So we put in little bottles so they could have different things for different milks. It might be an oat milk or an almond milk.
Sounds amazing.
And
I always bring tea when I travel.
Yeah, so much fun. Me too.
Yeah.
I mean, so I take usually a little Guy One traveling set that I have, and but you know, if you were really wealthy and someone was carrying it for you, why not take the big leather box with all the stuff in it?
Yeah, you should do this with more travel companies.
Oh no, it was fun.
Yeah.
I used to have this case that I took all my tea with me around the world. It was kind of famous for having this little yellow suitcase, but it's so old and battered 20 years later. I kind of need more like an assassin's case now.
Yeah,
you know, like with the, you know, with like where they put their gun with to have all the moldings. I need one now, like so I could put all my teas and slot everything, all my equipment in. But no gun company has come forward.
No. Well, maybe they will now.
Yeah. I know. I really enjoy working with other people because it's, again, that learning. You learn new things.
Yeah.
And I think that when we think, oh, I'm the expert, I know everything, is when we're really stupid.
Yeah. And also because you sort of reach new people by working together, like you, both for the other company and for you.
Yeah.
You like reach a whole new group of people that wouldn't find the tea company otherwise, probably.
Yes, that cross-pollination. I mean, it's super interesting working with like drinks companies like whiskey, because people there are already appreciating really delicious flavors or champagne, but it is true that people who are really into something, once you get them excited, will fall in love, and you can't unknow something. So when you taste an amazing tea, you're like, oh, I never had anything like this. Then you don't just say, oh well, that was a one-off experience. You want to get deeper into it.
Yeah.
So find people who are fans or enthusiasts about one thing, they're likely to become enthusiasts of another. I'm amazed, though, actually, talking about wealth and luxury, that there is a kind of group of people who really don't care about quality. They just care about brands and money. And sometimes the richest people are not the best customers.
No.
They really don't care. I don't know if it's because someone else is doing their cooking or buying their food or for whatever reason, but it's actually, we probably sell more tea to students and teachers than billionaires.
Yeah, really?
Yeah, because they care about where things come from and how they taste, and doctors.
And also because maybe you decide that this is something I want to put my money in. This is worth it. I'm gonna get great tea. That's how I do it. Like I'm gonna get good spices, good tea, and good this. But then I can buy
good chocolate, good coffee,
and then some things can just be sort of cheap.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, I'm amazed how now I know about something. I mean, I can't go back. But in terms of food ingredients, I do care, and I try to know where all the things I buy come from. And I spend quite a large portion of my income on food, and I'd rather do that than, say, clothes or jewels, although I do love my rings. And I was looking at the stats on this, and, our grandparents, our parents, I mean, they all spent higher percentages than we do now. We spend such a small a part of our income on food. It's almost like we don't think it's important, and yet we know so much more about how important it is to our health.
Why do you think that is?
That's just the way the kind of economics of food had gone. It just got cheaper and cheaper and more industrialized, and we started to expect it to be cheap. And so, like, when you go to a really good cheese shop and you look at the price of cheese, you're like, oh, when you compare it to what's in the supermarket. It's a big step, right? Because that's what cheese should cost.
Yes.
That's not, the animals are given, a good life, and the cheese is made with, beautiful ingredients with care and love, and it takes age and skill, aging and skill. Whereas, supermarket cheese will just be industrial product. Yeah. But I think that because we got so used to the industrial product, the shock is more. And the same with tea. A tea bag is so cheap. At what cost?
That's true. So, Henrietta, how long are you arrived to Copenhagen this Saturday, like 2 days ago. How long are you staying here?
I have the huge privilege to visit some of my customers here, and I'm going to go for dinner at some of those swanky restaurants. Not that I'm showing off.
Where are you going?
I'm going to Noma and Jordane.
Ah, okay. Tonight? Or...
No, this week. You have to spread them out.
Yeah.
And partly that is because I have to taste and see how the pairings work. And so I get the privilege of going there as a kind of job. Yeah. And also a huge pleasure. But it's really important to understand what you're doing and not just think, again, like, oh, I know. I've done that. You have to keep trying and tasting and learning, and the Noma menus are always changing so radically, and they come up with such new, exciting things. But I am also excited to see lovely friends in Copenhagen. I lived here a lot, especially during lockdown, and there are so many good people doing good things here, and so many interesting food people taking the world a little forward and influencing.
Can you name a few?
Yeah, I can actually. I really like what Rosio is doing. I see it very differently now, living in Mexico, but like bringing Mexican food culture through Sanchez, and she does care. I love what her husband is doing. Do you know that she is married to the man behind, oh my God, what's it called? There's a wine bar and a chicken, oh my God, I forgot what it's called. Villette and Poulet.
Yeah, I know those places, yes.
Yeah, I love Villette and Poulet. And
that's her husband.
Yeah. They're so cool what they do, and it's so different and so interesting. But there are lots we work with. Because I don't really work with them, so I separated them out, because there are loads of cafes and restaurants that we do work with here in Copenhagen. It was so beautiful when I started to live here and spent time with the people here. People were like, "Oh, I get it. Let me take your tea. I get it. Let me take your tea." And so now Copenhagen, this tiny city full of restaurants, is one of my best customer bases.
Really?
Yeah, and people buy a lot of the loose leaf tea here. You can buy it at Heart downstairs, and it's extraordinary. Like, people have like really embraced, because I think they believe in the ethos, and when you can really tell it and be here and answer questions and not. We're cynical, right? And you read something about someone and it says, oh, like direct trade, and you think, well, is it really true? Is it really? And I think I was able to build a bit of reputation here by being here and answering questions, because there is a lot of greenwashing, as we talked before, and ethics washing, and people using stories to sell brands rather than really mean it.
Yeah.
But I hope that just by looking at our website and like Instagram and stuff like that, you can get a sense that it isn't bullshit.
You must come to Stockholm, though.
I do come.
Take your tea and come to Stockholm, to more places.
I love, one of the nicest things to do is take the night train.
Yeah.
It's so romantic.
Yeah, it's nice. Yeah.
You have to go to Malmo, and then you can't do it straight from here, but from Malmo to Stockholm is so nice. And the train is like simple but elegant.
It is.
You arrive really early in the morning.
Yeah, and it's easy. Like, it's much easier than taking taking a flight to Stockholm.
Yeah. And that's obviously a much more sustainable way to travel. I mean, I have tried actually to travel much less, because even though I need to build relationships with my farmers, a lot of them we do have relationships with. And I realized during lockdown that a WhatsApp call and a FaceTime video or a Zoom is possible,
good enough,
where you already have a relationship, and that I need to take responsibility for my carbon footprint and not be traveling as much, although it is hard, because that's the best bit of my job.
Yeah.
But you have to adapt as we learn new things. You can't unlearn.
It's a new world, yeah.
Yeah,
or we're hoping for a new world.
But I met this amazing lady who works was in the art world, and she's very fabulous, wealthy lady, and living between Europe and America. And I said, "How do you travel?" And she said, "Oh, well, my husband really wanted to get a jet, because they were rich enough to have their own private jet." So, but I think that's so unsustainable. It's much more environmentally friendly to fly commercial, because obviously the plane is going anyway, and even though it's still a carbon footprint, at least we're doing it in the least damaging way. But she said, the problem was the food on the airplanes was terrible. So you know what she did? She set up her own company to provide the food in first class on one of the American airlines.
Wow.
I know. Wow. And she got it so that she could, and it's made my life so much better.
Yeah. So now she's flying commercial.
Yeah. And she has a new business.
That's a nice story. So, Henrietta, let's finish off with some quick questions. What tea do you start your day with?
Almost always white silvertip. But today was a green tea. It was whole leaf green tea from China.
Do you bring your own?
I don't have to, because here,
you have
at home I have. I always take my tea with me. It feels also, I feel if someone has bought it, hopefully if I'm staying with a friend and I know she has my tea, but I feel guilty to use her stash.
Oh, yeah,
I'm rich in tea.
So you just got married. Congratulations. What was served at your wedding?
Oh, we didn't have any wine or champagne. We had some beer, some mezcal, some tequila, and the rest was all tea cocktails or iced tea. So I made it all myself, crazy, made all the cocktails in our kitchen, and there was a big wedding. So I don't advise that to other people to decide to do the drinks catering for your own wedding, but the drinks were really good.
There were some pictures on your Instagram. It looked beautiful, and you looked so in love, both of you.
So happy. It was
beautiful.
All the tea.
Yeah. What is the best pairing with the cardamom croissant?
I think we touched on that. I think it would be, I would take a Himalayan tea, I think cloud tea or Himalayan spring. But if that wasn't if you don't like black teas, I think actually a Genmai cha might be quite nice. It's a green tea with rice. And I think it might give you that, like, because it's got that sort of malty, comforting cereal milk thing going on with the rice, with the toasted rice. I think it may be good. But let me know.
Explanation, yeah. Best food scene from a movie, book, or a song?
It's a really tough one because,
Are there some good tea scenes?
I was trying to think not of people eating pasta like in the great big feast or whatever. I'm trying to think of people drinking tea, and I couldn't really think of one. I think, actually, in Downton Abbey, do you remember that program Downton Abbey where those sort of aristocrats in a fancy old house? The dowager, the old lady played by Maggie Smith, she would make tea, and she actually did it really well. I remember watching it thinking, wow, someone's done some proper research, because she had the hot water samovar in the drawing room, and she was making it in tiny teapots, because when tea was really valued, the lady of the house would make it herself, and it would be showing her skill and her beautiful accoutrement, her beautiful bone china and her silver, and she would make it in the drawing room for her guest, and it wouldn't be done by the servants. They were considered too special for them. Yeah. So they
did the research.
Yeah, so watch Maggie Smith and Downton making tea. She does it good.
Place you always visit when in Copenhagen?
Popple,
yeah, the Noma burger place.
Honestly, every time
this summer.
Every time I go, it's different. They have a really lovely young Finnish chef at the moment. He comes from Noma. He's super good. And he really cares, and the sides are amazing. All the vegetable dishes, they amaze me, and I always want to go and see what's seasonal and because it's like going to Noma, having all the skill and understanding of Noma in a very accessible way. Yeah. I don't even have the burgers sometimes. I just think the sides are amazing.
Yeah, they were really good, and the kids actually loved it as well.
Yeah,
I had the lion's mane burger though, because I wanted to try that one.
I'm pretty certain he's called Tony. I always forget his name because it doesn't sound Finnish.
Yeah,
but it is Tony. He's amazing. He's so enthusiastic about bringing a kind of accessible but fascinating way of cooking. Yeah, I think it's really interesting.
Like Noma is taking over this town, right?
Well, I think there are people like Renee invested in or helped Richard set up a bakery, but didn't get involved. You know, like Renee was a really good partner because he just thought, I really want a great bakery here. How do I help Richard with the infrastructure that we have to set up a bakery, rather than saying this is how a bakery should be run? Because Renee knew that he wasn't a great baker. He said, okay, I'll get the best baker in the world to come. You know, and I think that he is helping invest in people, and like Rosio does her thing, and so that I think the Noma Group helps with infrastructure rather than for like taking a mission or an ideology or they're not megalomaniacs.
No.
Maybe within the Noma thing that has to be run in a very small way, but not in the. So I think it's a good thing for Denmark that you have a successful restaurant group investing in other businesses.
Yes.
In Mexico City there is an amazing chef called Lalo who has Maximo Bistro, and he also invests in other chefs and helps them set up restaurants because he has the infrastructure or he can raise the money, and that's often the hard thing for chefs, is raising the money.
That's a beautiful thing.
And he has something like, I think it's 11 restaurants now that he's helped set up. And it's really given, like Mexico City now has an amazing Malaysian restaurant because Lalo helped these young kids who were just doing a street stand. And I'm so impressed by that, like seeing talent.
Yeah, you can spot talent and then sort of help them grow their own.
Rather than the old method that would be like, the Gordon Ramsay group or something, or Jason Atherton, where it was like his way and many versions of his restaurant.
It's like the next generation of chefs. Hopefully,
we'll be encouraging and supporting other people who, and that would be a wonderful thing. I think the restaurant industry is really changing, and there's been so much wrong with it, and it's trying very hard to find these new sustainable ways forward.
More female chefs are coming through, and that's a good thing.
It really is. Although it's tough for them to still to this day. I think a successful women chef has probably grown up through a system that was incredibly sexist and encouraged her to be very masculine in her approach. And so to redefine yourself and redefine the industry is hard for anyone, and just as hard for women as for men.
Let's hope.
But they are. And there are some amazing people out there.
Yeah.
I have huge hope because I see how different it is, and I see how behavior gets called out, and people are really trying to be different. Even the ones that still are, running things they still exhibit old behaviors. I know they don't want to. They know it's not the right way forward.
Yeah. And it's not okay anymore.
It's not okay. Everyone knows it's not okay.
Yeah.
But it's hard for people to change. But as long as they want to, I think that we can let go of too much criticism.
Yeah, because they've been trained and existing in a world where everybody said it was okay.
Yeah,
it was
absolutely.
okay to behave that way, and then suddenly everything changed and it's not okay. So it's probably needs some time to.
Yeah, I mean, I have this friend.
Change.
I'm not going to tell you who, but she's a female chef. She grew up in a very traditional world. And she really struggles with it. She struggles with her anger issues and that kind of discipline and rigor and fear that a fine kitchen, because she knows it doesn't have to be that way, but that's the way she's always, knew how to run her brigade.
Yeah.
And she's like, God, how do you step back from that?
Yeah.
And she really wants to be a better leader and is disappointed in herself a lot of the time.
It's a learning process.
Yeah. What I think I find the same as being a boss. I have a team of 15 people and I'm constantly learning how to be a boss, and I'm often disappointed in myself.
Really? Why?
Because I just know I could have handled something better.
Yeah. What are your weaknesses as a boss?
Small things. I'm really good in a crisis. If there's a real crisis, I'm very good at finding a solution and staying calm and because I know we have the best way to get through it. But then I lose my shit over something stupid.
Yeah.
Something small that doesn't matter, and I get super head up about it. And
Yeah.
I'm afterwards, when I've calmed down, I have to apologize and say, look, I'm sorry. It's not that important. It's obviously, me worrying about bigger things and taking it out on a small thing.
It's like being a parent.
Yeah. I think so.
Yeah.
When we're learning all the time to be better, aren't we?
Yeah, we are. So Henrietta, last question. Tell me your secret.
Oh my gosh. Okay, you asked me what tea I started with. I did start with the green tea today, but the first thing I had when I woke up was a coffee.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
With milk?
No.
What kind of coffee did you have?
I had a pour over. I ground my delicious beans.
Where are the beans from?
Prologue. And I ground them just right, and I wet my pour over, and I weighed my beans into the cup, and I weighed my water, and I think a pour over or an AeroPress is the most like a tea. You get the most soft, interesting flavors. I'm not really a great espresso person, although I do think it's delicious. I wouldn't drink that, but it's also so intense that I can't taste anything afterwards. Not good for drinking tea.
No.
And espresso.
So do you start every morning with coffee?
Well, Richard makes it. If Richard makes me one, I'm not going to say no.
No.
But he often gets up really early, so it's before me.
Yeah.
So no, then I'll start with tea.
No.
But the best tea that you could have is tea made for you by your love, brought to bed.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Some mornings we'll take a Gai One set, which is a small Chinese teapot with little cups, and we'll take a really lovely tea, and we will just take it back to bed, and I will make it in bed many infusions of the same leaf. So probably 6 or 7 times put fresh water on this exquisite leaf, so we get every expression of the leaf. I mean, I think not everyone maybe understands that we've got a really good leaf tea. You can infuse it several times, and every time you put fresh water on, different flavors will dissolve into the water, but you've got to be very quick. So that's why you do in the small Chinese pot, very high leaf to water ratio. So I'd be doing like a 20-second extraction 6 times with fresh water each time. So with that high leaf to water ratio, you get that very quick infusion. And you're only dissolving a certain amount of the flavor, but you're using a lot of leaf, so that makes sense, right? And you can really taste the difference between 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then it starts to softer at 6, and then maybe it's done by 7, and that's a really just the two of you quietly experiencing a tea
ceremony,
just tasting it and not just gulping it. You're taking a little tiny cup.
Yeah, that's beautiful,
and sipping. And thinking.
It's romantic.
Yeah. But I think we would do that if you were drinking a wine. You were in a wine drink pairing, and you were in a restaurant and you wanted to try a flight of wines. You take a little bit and you sip it and you think about it, and you're like, oh, what is it I like about this wine or don't like? And I think often with tea, we just take a mug and we drink it.
Yeah. Because we're cold or something. It's just
or we just want the comfort of it rather than the flavour of it. And I would love people to have more from their tea. Like you can have comfort, you can have warmth, but you could also have these like super exciting, elegant, interesting, intense flavours that you perhaps have overlooked your whole life. So it's about the revolution I'd like to give people is to flood their lives with pleasure, not to like tell them they've been bad or naughty school children and they shouldn't drink tea bags, but just say, open your life up to something that's going to be so much more rewarding for the farmer as well, so that they get the real value of it.
What beautiful last words for this interview. Thank you so much, Henrietta, for being on the podcast.
Pleasure. I mean, gosh, I could go on and on. I'm sorry
and I could
if
listen to you
waffled.
all day. But there's a book. There is a Henrietta Lovell book.
Oh my gosh! I have to tell you, I just sold it, the Spanish edition. So
really?
I wrote it before lockdown, and yet it's still being published in different languages. It won an award.
Wow!
And it's now being published in Taiwanese, which is classic Chinese, and in mainland Chinese and modern simplified Chinese in America, and now going to be in Spanish for. Is that amazing?
Wow. And what's the title of it? I forgot.
It's called Infused Adventures in Tea.
Yes, because I saw it down here at Heart Bakery. They had it. Yeah.
It's also on Audible if you want to listen.
Yes.
I think Audible sold it to Spotify as well.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Oh, Henrietta dear, in the kitchen so sincere, a gentle brew you steer with grace and cheer. The kettle sings its song as you hum along. Our mornings feel less long where you belong.